Hello YouTube, it's me, Turkish Delight. I'm going to be talking about bleed. More importantly, Utah, pounce bleed. As you're going to see on the screen behind you, this is going to be a quick little Carno test where I definitively prove to some of the people who are, a bit skeptical about time to kill, that doing 12 tap pounces will kill a Carno, but doing a full 21-second pounce won't kill it. Now, I've completely broken apart bleed. As in, I now understand exactly what a tap pounce is doing all of the time, whenever it is applied. The results are more or less an average, so you will see slightly different things. The main thing is that bleed is affected by a few values. It's affected by stamina, it's affected by food. This does not actually increase the amount of bleed given. Instead, what it does is that it increases the timer that the bleed goes down for. And I've proven that the tick rate of the bleed is the exact same across all of these variables. Perfect. All you need to know, the lower stamina, the lower food, the more bleed you take. Secondly, standing, walking, running. Now, dinosaurs when they're walking suffer about, on average, a 1.6 times multiplier to their bleed. And when they're running, it's about a 2 times multiplier for their bleed. Certain dinosaurs, this can increase to nearly 3. And I'll be going over this more in depth in the later part of this video. Furthermore, there does not seem to be any sort of relationship between bleed given based on the weight of the dinosaur that you are pouncing. It seems that each dinosaur has their own bleed resistance, and this should be taken into account. So, for example, the Cerrado and the Stego have the highest bleed resistance. And Tenno, despite weighing less than the Carno, actually has a higher bleed resistance than the Carno, except for when it's running, but we're going to get into that later on. Overall, that's basically everything we need to know about bleed, and the most redundant information that you need. And going on to the next part of this video, we're going to actually talk more in depth about that. Hello people, it's me, Turkish Delight. Onto the actual part of this video. Completely ignore my whatever the hell that was at the beginning. I need to make sure that people stay to listen. I want to test if that voice does anything. Let's look in depth with the information. Now, the bleed timer for a Utah pounce is always 1 minute 18, at least to the best of my knowledge. In all of the tests that I've done is worked out as 1 minute 18, which is 78 seconds. Now, when a dinosaur's stamina falls to 50%, this number increases to 101 seconds. And when they're at 0 stamina, this number increases to 128 seconds. As I was saying, the bleed tick stays consistent at around 0.05, you know the drill, continuously. There is a slight fluctuation of about 0.003. So if you really want to be anal about it, yes, the lower stamina they have, it actually does increase the bleed by a tiny amount. But you're talking about a 0.003 difference. Like, it's not going to show itself in gameplay. But it's good to know. You're welcome. Another thing, food does the exact same thing. At 100% food, it's always 78 seconds. At 50% food, it's 88 seconds. Increased it by 10. And at 0% food, it's 101 seconds. Increases it by almost 30. Now, if you multiply both of them together, 100% and everything, 78. Perfect. 50%, it goes up to 118, which seems to be almost the addition of the increase with stamina and the increase of food put together. And the final one is 150 seconds, almost 2 minutes, which is very, very surprising. So it seems to increase by quite a lot when they're just on death's door. Going into the walking, standing, and running. What it seems to be is that dinosaurs that have more defensive positions. And what I mean by this, I mean that their attacks can be done perfectly well standing, and they prefer to be standing and trying to control the rate at which you attack. So these dinosaurs would be the Tenno and the Stego, meaning that your ability to pounce them is based on their defensive position. The more defensive and fortified they make their defenses, the harder it is to pounce them. And this can actually be seen in the standing, walking, and running. When they're standing, obviously, they have actually a surprisingly good bleed resistance. And when they're running, this changes. When they're running, when they're walking first, the difference between standing and walking, for the Tenno, already hits 2 times. Whereas the rest of the dinosaurs are about 1.6, right? The Carno is 1.3, which is very, very interesting. The Carno doesn't get punished as much by walking with bleed, which makes sense. The Paki and the Serrado take quite a bit of bleed. The Stego, however, is a 3 times multiplier, right? So if you're a Stego player, it is incredibly dangerous to start walking. And their running coefficient is 3.2. So it doesn't matter. It means that the devs have actually kind of thought this through, at least a bit, and understood that a Stego's never really going to walk and run. However, there is a major oversight, which is that if you ever cause a Stego to run, guess what? It's not really going to be taking as much bleed. What it means is that if you get it to walk at all or run, it's taking 3 times the amount of bleed damage, which is incredible. In terms of Tenno, it also reaches 2.9, so about 3, which makes sense. The issue with Tenno is that the Tenno can be quite offensive with its running. What it means is that as a Utah player, you want to make sure that you keep a radius around the Tenno so that you can react when it starts charging towards you. Your speed is greater, you can make more distance. Keep it running, but always make sure that you're keeping that gap between you two to entice the Tenno to keep trying to push, which is bad. For a Tenno player, you want to try and be very, very defensive, which you may actually see in the Tenno versus Utah 1v1 that I did with a new person to the Discord called Haru. Shout out to Haru. He also has a YouTube channel, which I'll be linking down below, so you guys can check him out. Especially if you're a Tenno main, please do it. This guy is very, very good. I'm very, very happy that the server now has a dedicated Tenno main to be able to test out things. Now on to the unfortunate things. The unfortunate thing is that there isn't a determined bleed to kilogram ratio. Every dinosaur had its own bleed resistance. I've tried to get a number to really calculate this. It's finicky at best, but you can kind of create one. So, for example, the Paki and the Tenno, weirdly enough, actually have quite a similar bleed to weight ratio, as does the Kano, which sits around 0.024. Whereas the Stego is 0.00016. So it is ridiculously more bleed resistant compared to the rest of them. With a bit more tinkering, I probably can get the bleed resist. And on to the exciting stuff. Tap pounces to kill. To kill a Paki, you only need to hit it 4 times with a tap pounce. So that means that you only need to hit the Paki with 4 1-second pounces and it will die, which is insane. You can pretty much just do that with one Utah and some careful, planning. So the Paki versus Utah 1v1 effectively is the Paki try not to be too offensive. Against a Kano, the Paki needs to be offensive. It needs to start getting those hits in to fracture it and then trying to do that. But the Paki versus Kano 1v1 isn't exactly the best thing in the entire world. Wouldn't do it. 2 Pakis, doable. You can kill a Kano with 2 Pakis. Incredible, really, really fun. A Tenno takes 11 to kill, which interested me quite a lot. And the reason for this is that we calculated the tap pounces to kill based on the dinosaur running. So if the Tenno is running, it's going to be taking a lot of bleed. Now this could actually be the case even in combat, because it's going to be draining its stamina very, very quickly with tail slams or kicks, with trying to position itself. So you can actually kill a Tenno very, very quickly. Same thing with a Kano. 12 tap pounces kills a running Kano. As I said before, a 21-second pounce does not kill it. It leaves it with 30% bleed, which means for doing approximately, or for doing like 8 seconds less pouncing, you've created 30% bleed out of nowhere. Incredible stuff. The Stego and the Serrado, or it gets really, really interesting. The Serrado could be anywhere around 20. This is because testing it has gone so long in combat situations that you just, it's ridiculous. These Serrados bleed resist, and Stegos is even worse. We're looking at maybe even like hitting up to like 40 tap pounces, which obviously, if tap pouncing wasn't as efficient, and a 2-second pounce had the exact same ratio as a 1-second pounce, you don't need to do 20. And then for a 4-second pounce, 10. This isn't the case, of course. But against Stego and against Sarah, it could indeed be advised to not do tap pounces and actually try and get as much as you can, just to try and wear them down, because they are ridiculously tanky and it is quite terrifying to go against. But then again, there's also the other thing, which is that Serrados have they're kind of like sprinters. They have a very, very good stamina thing. If you get a bite on a Utah, you can just chase them down, and that Utah will just be bleeding, 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 bleeding. So it's a heavy 1v1, but I reckon it can be done. I know through testing, you can kill a Tenno with one Utah by landing, those 11 tap pounces. It's nerve-wracking, but I've managed to pull it off, and it's very, very satisfying. That's everything. And now we're kind of on to the more exciting part of this video, which is that I want to try to, with the help of Snap, we're going to try and summarize a lot of the data, including damage modifiers on areas of the dinosaur's body, to create comprehensive, easily digestible overlays to help players out. So you kind of know what to expect. And I want to try and calculate a POUNCE BLEED calculator, where you can effectively input certain variables and it will spit out an expected result. It'll be an average result. You may get different things, but it will be approximate. So you can kind of gauge it, which will mean that newer people who aren't part of the server, if you want to test things out or you want to have that edge in combat, you can use this calculator. By all means, I'll be posting it when I produce it. And then I'll start working on a damage calculator to calculate bites to kill with certain dinosaurs. If you're wondering how many bites it takes to kill a stego, it's about 100. So don't do it. Wouldn't recommend it at all. With 100 bites, if you manage to ever land them, you'd probably bleed out the stego, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, it's ridiculous. But I hope this is at least interesting for you guys. And the data that I show is, I don't know, at least, how'd you say, useful. So yeah, that's about all for this video, really. I hope you guys enjoy. We are very close to 100 subscribers, so please subscribe. And I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Adios.